The survival horror masterpiece that is Silent Hill 2 debuted 24 years ago, and it changed the genre and medium in my opinion. Its story, taboo themes, complex characters, and mystery make it one of the most iconic survival horror games of all time, and a lot of that is down to its developers. Their artist-like design and approach to the game was unique, so when a remake was announced in 2022 being developed by Bloober Team, many people were skeptical at a minimum. A studio not known for any amazing games, and one who certainly wouldn't be able to live up to the 2001 original. However, when Silent Hill 2 Remake released last October, I believe most people were shocked to find what Bloober Team delivered. So today, I'm going to compare and discuss which I think is better between Silent Hill 2 or Silent Hill 2 Remake. Let's begin. Typically with these videos, I introduce both video games I'm comparing and then state their differences. However, if I were to introduce Silent Hill 2, I fear everyone watching would just click off this video because, this stage, everyone knows about Silent Hill 2. So I'm going to keep it brief and compare the games head to head. First and foremost, the story, the heart of Silent Hill 2. The original game was never going to be topped in my opinion, it's just too good. However, Bloober Team really surprised me and many others in this aspect, as the story for Silent Hill 2 Remake is an amazing rendition of the original game's material, while also adding new scenes. It didn't always land, but more cutscenes with these iconic characters is a good thing. Something I took from my time with both games is that the core of the game's story, James Sunderland, is played very differently by his original actor who brought him to life, Guy Seehee, and his newest actor, Luke Roberts. Guy Seehee's James feels very lost and disassociated. The whole game he kinda is just in this state of mind. He only wakes up at the beginning of the end of the game, once he realizes what he has done. Whereas Luke Roberts' James feels a little more heroic or falsely heroic. He's still the same killer, but he also has such a false sense of how he's gonna rescue Mary, even believing this after he's seen the videotape.
Mary?
James! Where are you? I'm waiting. I'm waiting for you. Please, come to me. Do you hear me? Please, why won't you come?
But where? Where are you?
You're so close now. Please, don't give up. Don't leave me out here, James! James!
I really noticed the difference in these characters during my favourite scene, when James realises the truth about Pyramid Head in the Twin Pyramid Head fight. Guy Seehee's James enters and he carries this level of tiredness and sadness after just witnessing the truth of what happened to Mary in the videotape. He is present and aware of what he has done by this point, and just before Maria is killed by Pyramid Head again, he lets out a scream of fear and terror.
Leave us both the hell alone!
And once she is killed, James falls to his knees defeated. Recounting then
weak.
what Pyramid Head is and what he needed to face
That's
him.
why I needed you. Needed someone to punish me for my sins. But that's all over now.
He drags himself up for the confrontation.
I know the truth. Now it's time to end this.
On the opposite then, Luke Roberts' James in the remake has this tired, broken kind of energy, but not as sad as James in the original game. He doesn't let out a cry or a scream until after Maria is killed, and when she does die, he lets out this roar that is unlike the original game. It's more frustration and anger this time with James. He even slams his fist against the floor, which is a nice little touch you can notice. He then, like the original, realizes and recounts what Pyramid Head is and why he needed to face him. He then picks himself up off the floor and faces his tormentor. This was just a specific scene that was different between the two games that best demonstrated the difference in how these two characters are played. In general, Luke Roberts did such a standout performance as James Sunderland in the remake, and from what I've seen of the guy in interviews and such, he has a lot of care for the character, and he understands James's importance not only to the game, but the survival horror games genre in general.
I'm ready.
In terms of the rest of the cast, the overall performance quality feels well higher, which it makes sense. It has that kind of Hollywood acting we so often see in modern day AAA games, and it well makes sense. There's been 23-24 years in the difference between games. However, Angela, for example, was great, a bit more emotive I feel than the original game, as well as she was also given a few extra scenes which will definitely help her feel more real. The same goes with Eddie as well. He feels more realistic when compared to the original Eddie, whereas the original feels more like bluntly psychotic.
just put the gun to their head.
And then Laura is also really well performed, although I feel oddly she feels more real and childlike in the original game.
Have you?
No. Is that why you're here too?
She's here, isn't she? If you know where she is, tell me. I'm tired of walking.
Her voice work in the remake does feel more professional, of course, and that's a good thing, but like I said in the intro, the original game was such a product of its time, and sometimes that had a positive effect. In this instance, it's with Laura, as I prefer her original performance. And then we have Maria/Mary, kind of the core of this game outside of James, and honestly, I think Maria's performance in the remake was just okay. No shade to the actors, of course, but many line deliveries were just off, especially all the classic Returnal lines. Like, some were kind of good, like the anyway scene.
James.
Mary! Oh. Maria, I thought... Sorry. Anyway, I'm glad you're alive.
Anyway? What do you mean, anyway? I was almost killed back there. I have never been so scared in my whole life. All you care about is that dead wife of yours. You couldn't care less about me, could you?
No, I just...
Then stay with me. Don't leave me alone again. You're supposed to take care of me.
But outside of that, there was just something missing, especially when compared to the original game's Maria, who was a survival horror icon by this stage. It didn't help that Maria had a design change compared to the original game, and while I personally had no issue with it, a large portion of the fanbase did, as Maria's original outfit is iconic as well as her character. It's not all bad with Maria in my opinion, as she still had that sensual, sexual feel to her character, but the mystery behind the character, that like sense of like just mystique, is kind of not there, and I can't quite say why. In the original game, Maria is this enigma, like I said. You really want to know more about her, but you don't really get to. As well as that, her original performance was top notch.
Oh, Maria. It's you. I thought you were... Sorry. Anyway, I'm glad you're alive.
Anyway? What do you mean, anyway? You don't sound very happy to see me. I was almost killed back there. Why didn't you try to save me? All you care about is that dead wife of yours. I've never been so scared in my whole life. You couldn't care less about me, could you?
No, I just...
Then stay with me. Don't ever leave me alone. You're supposed to take care of me.
The biggest offender of her scenes in the remake is definitely the prison scene, an iconic moment that is featured in the original game's intro front and center. And in the remake, a lot of the lines felt awkward and flat.
But it stabbed you. There was blood everywhere.
Stabbed me? What do you mean? I'm not your Mary.
In the original, Maria is able to kind of swap back and forth between Mary and her own personality.
James, honey, did something happen to you? After we got separated in that long hallway? Are you confusing me with someone else?
Aren't you Maria?
I'm not your Mary. Doesn't matter who I am. I'm here for you, James. See? I'm real.
And in the remake, it didn't feel like this at all. That was something so subtle and great about the original scene, by the way, was just how she's able to change on the fly in that scene. Snapping at James in one moment, but also comforting him in the next, while also gaslighting him this kind of manipulative way. It's all done flawlessly, and in the remake, it wasn't close to this level of detail. The best way I could describe Maria in the remake is when I was playing through the game for the first time, she was the one character who I'd watch a cutscene with, and I would be thinking, okay, you know, maybe the next cutscene will like win me over, and maybe the next, but that never happened, and it's not a great sentiment to hold while playing through the game. Like I've said, she was alright in some scenes, good in some, and then flat in others. Nothing overly bad, like I said, the performance was really professional, but that doesn't matter when the game's got to live up to the original game, and Maria just didn't. On the flip side, however, I feel like Mary's performance was pretty good. Maybe it's because she's in the game less than Maria, or maybe it's because she's a very different character to Maria, and of course, no shade to the actress. I mean, she played both of these characters, that's no small feat at all. Speculation wise, maybe the actress just felt better and more comfortable in Mary's role compared to Maria, or the direction was just better for the character. During the ending scenes and the cutscene before the final boss, Mary's acting is incredible, and I know it's really Maria, but when she's acting as Mary, it's great. And in the Leave ending, for example, the exchange between Mary and James is absolutely beautiful, and it's honestly exactly what I wanted from the remake. That scene is one of the best in the game, in my opinion.
Sorry.
Don't be. I told you. I wanted the pain to end.
Yeah. You did. But that's not why I did it. The truth is, I hated you. I wanted you out of the way. I wanted my life back.
If that's true, then why do you look so sad?
Mary.
It's okay, James. Here.
What is this?
It's what you've been looking for.
In terms of the overall themes of the game, Bloober Team nailed it, and no detail was missed. They did an incredible job of respecting the source material for this game, and gave an incredible telling of the story. However, as it probably comes to no one's surprise, I'm still gonna prefer the original game story. It's just so classic, every line of dialogue felt so meaningful, and it had such a unique atmosphere that can never be recreated. Speaking of which, let's talk about that Silent Hill atmosphere. The original game's atmosphere and vibes are unlike anything else. I mean, everyone knows how good the vibes of Silent Hill 2 are. Its art direction, its sound design, its music, it's everything. Team Silent really had this artist-like approach like I mentioned previously when creating these games. And it's because of how free the studio was to do whatever they wanted that the games Silent Hill 1, 2, 3 and 4 turned out the way they did. And a new studio trying to replicate this will be very difficult, but I feel Bloober did an amazing job. The fog looks amazing, it's really thick and dense, and it gave that lost feeling I first felt when I played my first Silent Hill game. Not knowing what's 5 feet in front of you was amazing and terrifying. And to tie the experience together, Akira Yamaoka came back for the music, and it's excellent as always. He returned to the project to remix the original game's soundtrack, and he did a phenomenal job. The only thing I could complain about or nitpick is that the music seems to be a bit muted at times, but that's just a trend in modern day gaming. For example, when audio mixing nowadays, typically you will see developers have the main song playing very quiet and in the background, but comparing it to the original game, that wasn't the case, as music was definitely in the forefront. However, when the music in the remake was in the forefront, it sounded incredible. Speaking on atmosphere, Bloober added a new type of atmosphere to this game that's not really seen in the original, and that's just pure darkness. The original game didn't feature much of that pitch black horror that we see used so often in horror games nowadays, and Bloober Team really made this game dark, and I mean really dark. Like, the best comparison I can think of would be RE 2 Remake, where anything outside like your flashlight's cone of vision is basically invisible. It really added to this game in my opinion. Like, James's radio would be going off like crazy, and I'd be able to hear the fucked up noises the creatures make, but I couldn't see shit. I even sometimes found myself slow walking down corridors with my shotgun aimed front and center, which means Bloober scared the absolute piss out of me. And that's crazy to me because I never really found Silent Hill 2 scary, more so disturbing and unnerving, and Bloober added this sense of terror element to the game, and it benefited from that. Now, enough about visuals and story. How is the game to play? Well, it's excellent. James now has a way more updated moveset compared to that of the original game's tank controls. You know me, I'm a tank control lover, but James is way more fluid nowadays in terms of his movement. To compare it to modern survival horror games, he feels like this in between of how characters in the Resident Evil 2 remake and 4 remake handle, but with a bit of that Resident Evil 3 remake flair, since James can now do a dodge, a complete update to his moveset, and a great addition at that. It doesn't feel overblown or dramatic, since James is just a regular guy. James's dodge is just a small sidestep, but it's enough to get you out of close encounters. And as for the combat in the remake, it's excellent. It's oddly enough feels a lot like The Last of Us in terms of James's melee and stuff, and even firearm combat. Guns feel decent and weighty. No new guns were added, which I'm honestly glad, since it would throw off this harmony of balance the game's flow has, where you get the pistol, shotgun, then rifle. It makes sense when you get each of these different guns, so I'm glad to see Bloober didn't mess with this. As well as the new and improved firearm combat, melee combat got a big overhaul, and I like it. I previously mentioned it seems very like The Last of Us when James swings his pipe or plank. It sort of magnetizes to the enemy if you're close enough. This can then also negatively affect you, sometimes causing you to just miss the enemy, but in general it works well, and the combat is really fun, it's visceral. James doesn't really feel too weak or too overpowered, and it's such a massive improvement when compared to the original game, which in the original game, that's its biggest flaw, the combat. Look, it worked fine, but you can tell it's dated, and even by 2001 standards, it's nothing amazing or revolutionary. So Bloober really needed to improve it here, and they did. Now something that goes hand in hand with the combat is the bosses, and in the remake, they were completely overhauled compared to the original. I know with the game's story and characters, I more so prefer the original game, but with the bosses in combat, it's a night and day difference with how much better the remake is. Bosses like the Flesh Lips, Abstract Daddy, Maria have all been fully reworked, as well as the encounters with Pyramid Head. As I played through for the first time, I was most excited to see how these fights would be recreated, and Bloober did such an amazing job. Looking at the original game's boss fights where the mechanics are stand in the corner, shoot, run to the other corner, shoot, and then repeat again, so this definitely leaves a lot to be desired. And in general, in my opinion, the remake is way more fun to play, and I mean that from a mechanical gameplay sense. Like, I will definitely go back to the original game from time to time, and of course does the remake by no means replace the original game, but man, that gameplay and combat is so fun. One other counterpoint to the original is the loose stealth mechanic seen in the remake. If you time it right, James can stealth take down with his melee, which instantly knocks enemies to the floor, which again adds a new little mechanic that isn't really present in the original game. In terms of endings and unlockables, there is some new stuff here in the remake, as well as all 6 original endings returning, and Bloober added 2 new endings that they cooked up themselves, which I'm glad, and this is genuinely how content in a remake should be done. You keep everything that was originally there, but add new stuff. In terms of unlockables, there is no star ranking system sadly like the original game, which I'm kind of thankful for, so we only see the return of the chainsaw melee weapon, and none of the spray weapons either. As disappointing as it is that the sprays don't return, the chainsaw is super fun, so I made a whole video actually dedicated to using the chainsaw only, so you should check it out after this. Both of these are incredible video games. Silent Hill 2 is an all-time classic, everyone knows that at this point, but with the Silent Hill 2 remake, the odds were stacked against Bloober Team, and they pulled it out of the bag and created an incredible survival horror game that really deserves to sit with the best there is in modern day gaming. A faithful remake that even as a super fan of the original, I can confidently say is the best Silent Hill game in the last 20 years or so. Both games have their flaws, and it's funny since each of the game's flaws is fixed by the other while they gain a new flaw. So for example, Silent Hill 2 isn't revered for its amazing gameplay, as well as Silent Hill 2 Remake not having quite as good of a story as the original. In my opinion then, to conclude, there was never any universe where Silent Hill 2 Remake would be better than the original game. I mean, that's okay. I knew the original was going to be better, but the remake still tried and it was still incredible. I highly recommend it. So there's your comparison between the two. Play both if you can. And then also, hi, I'm back. Sorry, you know, there's been such a delay between my most recent videos. Life's just gotten so busy recently between college and my job, my girlfriend, my social life. I haven't really had much time to sit down and record and create videos, which is a shame, but hopefully I can just pick up some more steam again. Although it probably won't be until summer when I'm properly, consistent again like I was. Regardless, thank you so much to everyone who has liked and subscribed and supported these recent videos, and I hope 2025 can be a big year for the channel. That's all from me now, so I'll see you on my next video. Peace.